Bradley, welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Ken, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you.
I'm glad you're here. I mentioned to you pre-podcast, I've been using this term. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, maybe the universe is stepping in and said, you got a guest coming on that likes to talk about being the architect of your business. My own team that's probably listening to this is going to go, Ken stole that from Bradley because he's been using it all the time lately. But I love it. But you haven't always been the business architect. So maybe can you walk us through, kind of growing up and an early career and what led you to where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. No, I was definitely not. I was anything but the architect of my business. And so I'll share a little bit of my journey just because I think other business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders can see some of their journey inside of my journey. And so I'll start off that my dad's a small business owner. Specifically, he's in agriculture. He's a farmer. He has farmed, at one time, he was farming close to 10,000 acres. And so he has a farming operation. And then also, other farmers bring in their seed that they get out and they bring it to him. They condition it, bag it. And then that's how my dad's business, and that's what I kind of grew up around. Well, with that in agriculture, when you're planting and you're harvesting, you're at the mercy of weather. And so a lot of times, my dad missed a lot of my sports games growing up, basketball games, baseball games. He sure as heck was not coaching any of my teams. He worked 7 days a week. He's still to this day one of the hardest working people that I've ever seen. And my dad didn't teach me that. I was caught that. I just caught it. I just saw what it takes to run a small business and specifically in agriculture. Well, that had a profound impact in me, both in college and then ultimately whenever I got into the workforce. So in 2009, started my business. That was helpful. Prior to that, I'd been in sales organizations. So really the only two things that I really felt like skills, so to speak, I had is I really felt like I did genuinely know how to work hard. And then number two, I felt like I knew how to sell. And here's the thing, that's exactly what was needed in the initial stages to get that business off the ground, to give it some initial lift. And I'm so grateful for that. And it worked up until the point that it didn't. And
Sure.
simply put, I ran out of time. And so in 2015, I had a health scare. I was 34 years old. I thought I was having heart issues. I wasn't having heart issues. I was having the first signs. I was having panic attacks. I didn't know what that was, but I went saw a physician. He ended up referring me to a cardiologist immediately the next day. Go get a stress test, and the cardiologist said, "Look, um, I don't know what you got going on in your life. Nothing's wrong with your heart, but whatever you got going on, you need to change it." And he just walked out the door. And look, I wish I could tell you that, from that moment, I walked to the office and everything changed. Like, I didn't really know, Ken,
Yeah.
what else to do. I knew how to work hard and I knew really how to sell and, be the one where everything was going through me in the business. We now, of course, refer to that as being the rainmaker of the business. That's what I knew. And so it's not evident at the beginning, whenever you've done something for a period of time, that you don't know another way. And so it took me a really long time and a chance encounter that maybe we can get into a few months later that ultimately took me down a different path that I'm so grateful for.
You know, it's interesting too because it's not just that we don't know how to change. It's also that I think our identities get wrapped into being the guy or the girl, right? Like
That's so true.
Rainmaker is a term I'd be like, call me that. I like being called that. You know what I mean? It's the guy
Sure.
that makes things happen, right? You're the rainmaker. And
Yeah.
how did you pivot?
I want to just double tap on what you just said right there.
Yeah.
I don't, that doesn't get brought up as much sometimes whenever I've done some other podcasts, but you know, I had my identity in performance. I had my
Right.
identity in performance. And if we did well and the business was doing well and we were winning industry awards, um, I was going to do whatever it took. I was going to do
Sure.
whatever it took. I mean, I had, athletics and sports has always been a big part of my life, and I like to compete and like to win, and I was just going to do whatever it took. And you just put your head down and do like my dad did. So, I said, well, some son, nobody's coming to save you. You're an
Right.
entrepreneur. It's like you just got to do it, and that's fine up until the point that it's not. And so, fortunately, a few months prior to that health scare, it was actually literally it was in July, basically 10 years ago. And so it's always around this time, interestingly, that I really do reflect at the time we're doing this recording. But I joined Strategic Coach earlier that year, and I was in Toronto. And at this point, I still am, trying to make some changes. I mean, I tried cutting back some caffeine, but like in the business, there was no changes. I didn't
Right.
really know what to do. So things are kind of carrying on. And so we're doing the 10x is easier than 2x exercise, which is now portrayed in the book that Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy have come out with. But at the time, there was obviously not a book, but it was that exercise. And so we're doing that. And the guy I'm sitting next to actually had played professional baseball for a period of time, and he was in financial services. So I found out earlier that day, he was like, "Oh, I'm a financial services advisor." And so I'm thinking the guy does, I don't know, 500,000 to 750,000 in revenue. Like that's what I'm expecting. And so he does this exercise and he does it alone and then we do it together. He says, "Okay, well, so last year we did 40 million top line and I made 5 million personally. So here's what 400 million and 50 million would look like." I was like, "Wait, what?
Right.
What you did how much?" And then he goes, "Okay, now you go." I was like, I'm not going. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
This
you
is
don't even
embarrassing.
want to
You make more
speak.
per month than my business does in a year. Like, this is ridiculous.
Totally.
And so he said what I'd heard for so long. Bradley, it's just systems and processes. I got systems and processes, and I got a great team. And I said something smart back to him and said, "Man, I'm so tired of hearing that. Everybody says that, and not a single person ever shares with me what it actually looks like." And he says, "Well, I'll show you at lunch." I didn't think much of it. And then he did. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's actually what it takes." I remember how beautiful the documents were, how organized they were, how the organization that he had with all of his digital files. And he just said, "Bradley, I got my business out of my head." And that was finally the thing that linked it all together that somebody had never shared with me. It's almost like, the Wizard of Oz, where you are like trying to look behind the curtain.
Sure.
Can everybody would say, "Hey, we got systems and processes." And then you'd be like, "What are these like fantasy systems that are out there that I just don't,
Right.
like maybe that's in back rooms that I don't know about?"
Right.
And nobody ever shared with. And when he finally did, and I never got a copy of those. I wish looking back on it, I had, but that really made an impact. And I think it was the visual aspect of seeing the documents, number one. And then I also think that was so significant because I had an idea in my head of what like type of business he had.
Right.
And then when he said we did 40 million and I made 5 million, I was just like, it blew my mind. And that was the thing that ultimately changed.
It sounds like also by him being gracious enough to show that to you, you saw it, and it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like something clicked when you saw it where you like, there is immediate hope. What was that thing that clicked? Was it, oh my God, okay, he really does just, he's got it all organized and he's delegating every, I mean, what was that for you? What was
Yeah.
the thing where you were like, okay, this is possible? Because you weren't just following his playbook after that, because you had to
No.
adjust it and scale it for your business, right?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that that's a pro question right there. So I'll give you an analogy. I played golf in college on scholarship, and I was a decent golfer enough to be able to play golf in college, but I wasn't anything special. And so when I went to Auburn, there's a guy, people can look him up if you're a golfer. His name's Lee Williams. He was a two-time Walker Cup player, okay, which is effectively for amateurs the equivalent of the Ryder Cup, okay, in golf. And not many players have ever played on the Walker Cup, let alone been a two-time Walker Cup player. And Lee and I were the same, or I guess are the same age. And he had won the state amateur. I mean, he was just always one of the best players in the state. And so I got to work out with him. I got to play a lot of practice rounds with him. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I went to a Division II school for a couple years prior, and there were some pretty good golfers there. And I saw you get around of like how those guys practice and how they prepare and how they got ready for tournaments, or truthfully, how they didn't get ready for tournaments, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they were just not were pros. And then Lee, I saw on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, he was at the gym at 9 o'clock at night where everybody else was downtown in Auburn at the bars. And he would wake up Sunday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and go run. And then he was at, every, Saturday morning before college football games, he's at and which is obviously big at Auburn. He's on the range hitting balls, and then he comes to the game, things like this. And I remember saying like, oh, well, then that's why he's going to play pro. And he did for a period of time, and he did pretty well. And so what happens is forever your mindset is changed of what it actually takes.
Right.
Okay. So in sports, people have, heard the stories of Kobe Bryant and LeBron and Jordan and how just incredibly, God-given talent they had, but then their work ethic is so much more than everybody else's.
Sure.
So what happened to me there was the small examples I've had in the past of where I would go to a conference and I would be in front of somebody and they would talk about this system or they would talk about their sales process. And I would say, can I get my hands on that? Is there any way I could see that? And then sometimes what I would get back, it would be one piece of paper with a handful of bullet points. And you're thinking to yourself, this cannot be it. This
Right.
cannot be the thing that you're touting on stage. There's got to be more to it. And so when I saw in Toronto, it's like when I saw Lee Williams practicing, that my mindset was forever changed of like, that's why that guy has a $40 million business.
Right.
That's what it actually takes. And that's what it looks like. And that forever, like the bar was forever raised for me to say, okay, now I actually understand.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And so that change is what happened to me. And it almost happened in an instant within 30 seconds because you see like that's why he's got there. Because he was a financial advisor, right?
Right.
Or he himself was. And then of course he created a financial advising company based on what he individually was doing. And that just made sense to me. It's like the bar was forever changed.
I gotta think. Yeah, that's a really cool insight because I have to think as you're telling me that, I'm like, it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the perfect intersection when you're talking about your upbringing and your dad being the model of hard work and how you were,
Yeah.
I even wrote it down. You caught it. I like that term. You caught
Mhm.
it. It wasn't like you said, sit down, I'm going to show you something. It's like, it was just there. You got infected. You caught it. And so you always knew you had that. You have it now, you had it then, you had it when you were a kid, you had it in your, right? You've had it your whole life. You had the work ethic. And I think, at least for me, because I feel like I've got a very strong work ethic too. And it's like, I don't really need to be the smartest guy in the room. If someone's going to write the playbook and I have the strongest work ethic, because I've always felt like, you can outsmart me, but you can't outwork me kind of, I've had that
Yep.
mentality.
Yep.
And it's like, so the confidence I get at times when someone's willing to share or partake with information is you're going to give me the playbook and I've got the work ethic.
Yep.
It might not be smooth sailing the whole time, but it's going to work, right? To some degree. Maybe I'm not going to build a $40 million business, but maybe I can take my $1 million business to 2 million or whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
100%. And that's so true is that, it doesn't mean that just because he had built a $40 million business that now all of a sudden became, my North
Right.
Star. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, for
Right.
most people, if you're doing 500,000, you get to a million, you double your business, you change your life. I mean,
Sure.
or if you're at a million and you get to two, you've doubled that business. And so, like it doesn't have to be 40 million. I mean, to get to 40 million, that's a medium-sized business, by the way.
Yeah.
And so like that's a significant business to be able to do that. And I don't at all want to just simplify simply down to that's the only thing he did. Clearly, he had the right product market fit. He hired the right people, all of those things. But to himself, he said, I got my business out of my head. And
Right.
this is what it actually looks like. And so it really was a shift of I still wanted to work hard. I just needed to apply what I was working on differently.
Right. Well, and I think, to that point too, it's not like that guy developed those systems when he got to 40 million, right? He developed them a long time ago
Absolutely.
and refined them along the way to get to 40 million. I think
100%.
that's where people get confused. It's a stacking, right? And he probably did it way back when and got better and better and better over time. It reminds me a little bit. I've been in the recruiting business for about 12 years now. Our first company, when I left corporate, I just went, this is a good industry. I'm getting into recruiting. I'll figure it out. It's not that tough. You call people, you talk to them, you place them. I understand leadership. And if you want to buy yourself a decent paying job, that is all true, right? If you're trying to build a business, it's a pretty lousy way to build a business because there was no playbook on how to build a large recruiting agency. So as we came out of COVID, I was in a similar boat to where it was like, man, if I go on vacation, revenue goes down. If I don't want to take calls for an afternoon, revenue goes. I mean, everything I did for myself, revenue goes down. Not because there weren't the resources there, but because of a lack of resourcefulness on my part. I mean, I just wasn't using the people and the resources. I wasn't even looking for a playbook. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got the playbook, and it kind of sucks. It's for a mediocre business. But COVID, I mean, I think one thing about that, it gave me time at least to reflect. Maybe in the same way your injury, gave you time to reflect. 10 years ago, or your medical situation, and it was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Right? I don't want to be in this like owner operator chair forever.
Yeah.
So I went and found someone with a playbook. And
Yeah.
props to you, James Blackwell, if you're listening. And he shared it with me. And we've collaborated now ever since. But we grew the business 4x in about the last 3 years, by doing exactly what you're talking about, which is finding someone with great systems, implementing those, stacking them, and building on those.
Yeah, to your point, I was really close. So before I went to Toronto, I was really close. I didn't lay it out as succinctly as I'm about to share with you, but I really had three options, and one of them wasn't really an option. One was, well, keep doing what I'm doing. Clearly, that's not working.
Right.
That is not working. And also, the business had been plateaued for a while. Like it had been stagnant for a year. So that's why I said it worked up until the point that it did not work.
Right.
So I knew really this stinks. The business is plateaued. I'm working harder, and it seems like the business is just moving sideways. It's just sideways energy. And so I knew, well, and I actually looked into this, that I could go back into the corporate world, specifically pharmaceuticals at the time, and I could go get, a district manager, regional manager job, $200,000 base salary, company car, 401k, benefits, the whole nine yards. And now I had 4 or 5 years of business owner experience that I could apply to that. And so maybe this is wasn't going to be accurate, but I've really felt like that was still going to be there. Like I could always, it may not be that job, but I could go back to that. So I said, well, let me give this one more shot. But I really didn't know what that next thing. Yeah, I got to do something different. I mean, Goldsmith says, what got you here is not going to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
But I still was on this search of like, I don't know what the different is until again I was in Toronto. And so, but I was really close. I was really close to throwing in the towel but there's a part of me that just did not want to do that. I didn't
Yeah.
want back to like ego and back to pride and back to those kind of things that I don't think, in fact, I know I would not have been willing to say that back then.
Right.
But let's be real, Ken, that's what it was,
Yeah.
right? That
And
was,
it's a little bit of identity too. It's sort of like,
oh, I think, yeah, for sure.
yeah, well, I had the exact same thing. So my wife and I didn't tell the whole story because I've told it on here, but just briefly, we went like recruiting dried up in 2020. It
Yeah,
didn't slow down. It stopped. It was like three
yeah,
quarters of no revenue. So we had newly relocated to New York, and we took online commercial real estate courses. And quickly, it was like, yeah, screw recruiting. Let's just get into this new path. I'm good at sales. Commercial sounds great. Big ticket.
mm,
Went all the way through the courses, went to take the test, and the testing facilities closed because of COVID. And it was really that catalyst where I was like, maybe I ought to actually take what I've got in front of me and like apply myself, right? And try to find some mentors and try to find somebody that's got the
yeah.
playbook, and thank God that facility wasn't open. But it was like, it felt like nothing wrong with quitting something that's not right if you've given your all, but it didn't feel like I had given my all. And it doesn't sound to you like you felt like you had given your all either at that point when you were in Toronto.
I definitely,
I don't mean from
it's
an
interesting.
effort, but maybe from an intellect standpoint.
Yeah, it was definitely more that because
Yeah.
from an effort perspective, like the number of hours, I mean, really, it was truly 7 days a week. And if it was, it was on my mind all the time. I mean, I might have been somewhere with friends or might have been with a family somewhere. Might have been with them kids, but my mind was anywhere but there,
Right.
for sure. But I really didn't. Yeah, it's true. Like it was an intellect perspective, which is why I say it wasn't the hard work. It was because I just wasn't working on the right things. I just
Right.
wasn't working on the right things. And I'll share with you kind of a specific example to kind of bring this down. So, so this was the very next. So I come back to Toronto and actually now start to try to put pen to paper. And what that means is like creating Word
Sure.
documents, right? So
Sure.
I'm actually now typing things into a document for the first time. Well, I hired an EA because I was like, okay, that's what I need to do, get an EA, which we agree. I had hired a full-time EA. I didn't need a full-time EA at the time, but like whatever, neither here nor there. So we start creating this process, and it's working. It's going actually really, really well. Well, 11 months later, she leaves, and I realized, crap, I did it again. I did it again. I taught her all the things of how to set these appointments, what to say, the emails, the follow up to ensure people came, the post follow up, all of it. It was a beautiful system, and I realized it was in her head. And when she walked out the door, it literally she didn't turn in a 2 week notice. She literally just walked out the door. And so, obviously I was like not happy about that. But then I thought, crap, I did it again. I did it again. We didn't have any assets whatsoever. We know that's what we refer to them as, to where then I could train someone else and say, look, this is exactly how we do this. And so like I kept having to learn the same lesson over and over and over again. I was constantly reinventing the wheel. Now, obviously, we we certainly started to fix that, obviously, and that's what we share with a lot of our members. But that's an example of I thought I'd learned the lesson, thought I was
Yeah.
creating some assets, and then
Yeah.
here's a really key system that's actually growing the business. I've got
Right.
somebody helping me with it. This is a process that's good. She leaves. Oh my gosh, now we actually have nothing in
Sure.
place. So, it took me, I'm hard headed. I'll say
But
that.
you know that I mean that's kind of the journey though in a way because it was a step forward. It sounds like in the sense that you at least started delegating, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe
Yeah,
you
for
didn't get
sure.
the SOPs together in the playbook,
Yep.
but so talk to me about the growth of your business from there. So she leaves, assuming you go, okay, we're going to do it
Yeah.
again, but maybe a little bit different this time.
Yeah, for sure. And so within a year and a half, we had by far the best year that we had. And then we followed that up 3 years in a row with the best years that we had ever had in that company. And what is also more important, they were the most year over year growth. They were the most profitable, and I worked the least. So
Perfect.
what was interesting, it was getting into like this crisscross to where my time in that business, even on that business, was going down, and revenue and profitability. And, fortunately, my personal income, family personal income was going up coincidingly with that. And that's a direct result to simply getting the business out of my head and the business running on an operating system that was not me. And so some of the language now, again, that we use, that hopefully helps people, is that I realized the business was actually, Ken, running on an operating system. It was just a you
Yeah.
operating system or
Yeah.
a me operating system. It was running off of me. And I'm not a machine. I'm not an operating system. I'm a human, just like everybody else. And so I get exhausted. And so the business was like a hand crank. If I'm in there cranking that handle, to your point, you said earlier, like if you show up, the money shows up. You don't show up, money doesn't show up, right? Well, that was 100% the case for
Yeah.
me. That if I was in there cranking that handle because it's an you operating system, the business drives forward. Well, eventually I don't want to go play golf. I don't want to go on a vacation. I don't want to work all the time. Like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not
Right.
what I signed up for, right? Wasn't what I didn't think I signed up for. And so, what we really had to do is we had to upgrade the operating system. Just no different than you upgrade your iOS or Mac OS, whatever version you use. But you had to upgrade those operating systems. And so mine needed to be upgraded. And though that's what we did. And so I transitioned myself from being the Rainmaker, where everything ran through me, everything was dependent upon me, to then I became the architect of my business. And what do architects use? Well, they use blueprints, and hence now that's why we call it the blueprint operating system.
That's really cool. I thinking about to that day almost 3 years ago. It was July 28th of 2021
Mm.
when I kind of did something similar, and I remember that day specifically because I screenshotted my calendar at one point because to handle all of the candidate and client calls that I felt I had to take. I remember the call I had with that mentor that ended up helping me was sandwiched in between 11 other calls in one afternoon. It was just 30 minutes, 30
Yep.
minutes, one after another. And then I'll just squeeze this in. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I joined that program and the next week I stopped taking all candidate calls. I still worked with clients,
Hmm.
but I just bit the bullet, and because there were people around me that I think a lot of business owners too, again, ego, I'm the rainmaker, whatever. No one will do what is good. No one can close the sale. No, and the more we keep telling ourselves that, we're justifying and kind of cementing, I think, our position as the rainmaker, which is not fulfilling us. So we're in this like
Yep.
crazy eight loop of I'm the rainmaker, poor me. We're almost like a martyr. It
Yep.
sucks because we think we're doing the things that should have equaled fulfillment or happiness because we're making
Hmm.
decent money, but we're burnt out, our health's bad, our relationships are suffering, and everything else. When did you discover, or how long had you been at it when you were like, okay, not only do we have this down now, our business is cranking, it has been cranking, it's growing, I'm working less, I need to share this. When did that come to you?
Yeah, I'll share that. I want to go double tap on something you just mentioned right there. You know, and then I'll share kind of how it started to people came to me because they were like, "Hey, this is what are you doing?" basically.
Right.
And then I'll share with you I had to relearn the lesson. But to your point is that I had to face something that I now refer to as simply a skill deficiency, is that I didn't know how to get the business out of my head. I just didn't know how to do it. And so Hormozy talks about this a lot. I love his stuff when he talks about, just see it as a skill that you can acquire. And again, I didn't have that mental model, but when I started to allow myself to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I actually don't know how to train the team. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to create a recruiting system. What I want to make sure that people hear is it wasn't from a place of shame or guilt. It wasn't a place of like, a pity party that I was having. It was a place of vulnerability within myself to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I've been winging it. I'm going to go and try to figure it out.
Mm.
I'm going to go listen to the podcast. I'm going to go actually read some of the books. I'm going to go buy a course. I'm going to go get a coach. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to figure this out. And a specific example of that, somewhat embarrassingly, um, and this is not an indictment on Auburn University, but I got my degree in finance. I got my degree in finance from Auburn. And at Auburn, they don't share with you, or at least at the time, I shouldn't say not Auburn, but at the time, in the degree in finance was really corporate finance. It wasn't entrepreneurship. So it wasn't run like how to read small business financials. Okay. I mean, the financials we were looking at was the financials of Harley Davidson in
Right.
2001, 2002, right? How to calculate net present value of the stock of Harley Davidson or Apple or whatever the case may be. So it wasn't small business financial. So when I started my business, my first few years, one of my, like, I think it was my third year, my accountant said, Bradley, congratulations. You made $32,000 in profit. And I said, fantastic. Where's that money? Honestly, I asked him, he said, what do you mean, where's that money? Like, you spent it. I was like, I don't understand. You just said I made $32,000. He's like, well, that's profit. That's not cash. I was like, what does that mean? You
Right.
know? And so, it's embarrassing to say that, but that's the honest to goodness truth.
Sure.
And so then I was like, well, now what? He goes, well, you owe the IRS $10,000. It's like, how do I, what? Yeah, I have profit. I have no money in the bank, and I owe the IRS $10,000. This small business stuff is for this is for the birds.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Within 2 minutes, you went from you're going to write me a $32,000 check to I'm going to write the IRS a $10,000 check. Like
Yeah, pretty
that's a
much. Yeah,
nasty
pretty much.
swing.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. I was like, what in the world? This is ridiculous. I don't understand. I ended up actually asking him. I said, Jeff, will you help me? Will you mentor? Like, will you show me? He goes, yeah, man, absolutely. Let's get through. I'll get past tax season. Let's sit down. So I did, and then I got a bill in the mail for $600 for his hours, and I was like, I'm in the wrong business. This is ridiculous. So anyway, but that's the thing where I had to look in the mirror and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm running my business on Quicken, not QuickBooks. I didn't know the difference. So I say all this stuff, like it is embarrassing, honestly, to share with you that these things happen, but they did happen. And so then now it's like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to go figure this out. Okay. So, and I'm going to start acquiring skills. I'm going to like, how do I need to think about this mindset? What are the skills I need to acquire? And then do people have tools like templates and swipe files and, playbooks as an example to kind of help me with this? So, yeah, we turned it around. People noticed a difference. People noticed a difference in me. They started obviously noticing a difference in the business we were growing. And, we had our first two clients that were not really coaching clients, that we were really outsourced COOs, basically. We were paid basically like pretty much $5,000 a month to run those businesses.
Right.
And I enjoyed that a lot, but that is not a scalable model at whatsoever. We didn't have a team around this. So I never coaching and consulting wasn't something I sought after. It just kind of fell into my lap, and I really enjoyed sharing some of those things with clients. Well, the problem with that is I then built up to 22 private clients at one point, and your scenario that you're talking about, like back to back to back to back to back calls. I remember that one of the days that I had one of those days, and I barely like went to the bathroom,
Right.
and I was like, I had to learn the lesson again. I was like, wait a minute now, this has got to stop. I enjoy coaching so much. I love doing it. I love helping people. I love seeing the results that they're getting. But I'm going to burn out again doing
Yeah.
it yet again. And so then I had to start to package this together because I also saw Kent, I was saying the same things over and over and over and over and over again. Like I'd get off one call, and be like, Ken, I literally just told the same thing to David on the previous call.
Right.
I was like, I wish we could just all be on the same call. And so obviously we started to put together a program to solve those common problems.
So funny. I've done the same thing where you clear capacity. You're like, this is great. And then we just fill it up, like without
Fill it
even
back up.
thinking about it.
That's right.
We fill it back up. And I had a lot of repetitive things in recruiting, as you can imagine. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times, how many candidates you got to talk to before you get the right one for the same job? So then it was like, why don't we just do an intake, create a video of the job, or better yet, have the founder or CEO of the company create the video,
Mm.
right? And we're still going to do one-on-one, but then the one-on-one doesn't necessarily have to be from me. If they can hear me talking about the job on video, I can delegate that now. So you go from kind of, I wouldn't say struggling entrepreneur, but struggling to
No, I
find
was struggling.
balance. Okay,
No, I was
struggling
struggling. Yeah,
to
I was
to
struggling for sure.
to then succeeding and getting momentum, and then having others come to you, and now that steamrolls. You realize you've got a capacity issue again, but you do have a passion for it. You just don't want it to wreck your life or put you completely out of balance. So then did you make a conscious decision at some point to go, okay, look, I
Mhm.
can put a program together, impact the same people I'm impacting now with less time and probably greater scale?
Yeah. And the limiting belief that I had before was that nobody can teach this stuff as well as I can. And they will value one-to-one time with me more than time in a group. And that simply was a limiting belief. I fundamentally believe now, it's actually one of our maxims, is that environment dictates performance. And so the environment that I was in with those clients in a one-to-one most of them, Zoom calls is good, but it is not nearly as good as putting them in the environment with other peers and hearing other people to share their experiences, even different industries. Okay, whether it's a recruiting company, a marketing services company, an insurance agency owner, a behavioral therapy company, an exterior remodeling company, etc. When you hear the same principles, then you hear how somebody else is processing that in their head. You do it in small groups. And so it is such a better environment and community to where they're learning from one another.
Yeah.
Yes, they're hopefully learning some stuff, from me, but it's putting them in the right environment. I mean, you think about, the environment of the Navy SEALs, right? You're not going to go shape that environment. The environment's going to shape you if you go through buds. It just does. It just
Right.
shapes who you are. And I don't know a ton about the military, but that's all the things that you read, that environment will shape you. It changes how you show up. And so I think that is where the right program structured correctly. Okay. I mean, if you just throw people on a Zoom call, well, no, but there's these details now that have to be in place to make that experience. Because I'll share with you that even at times where I've had a call where I've gotten the flu or gotten the stomach bug the day before. So I had one of my associate coaches do it. Initially, Ken, it wasn't great. Wasn't
Right.
great. They had tech issues. They didn't have some of the software on their computers to do it. The music wasn't playing right. And people said, "Hey, they did a good job, but honestly, Bradley, it wasn't as good as you." So all these things have to get really architected in
Mhm.
place to where the experience is just as good. Quite frankly, it's better. A lot of times it can be better if it's actually built and architected um, that way. And so obviously, there's a lot of things we do with both in-person events and virtual events that we do because we really want people, just like when it wasn't hearing systems and processes that changed my life. It was the doing.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes, seeing what I saw in Toronto changed, but where the business actually changed is when I got my butt back to the office and actually started to put together and organize all the stuff that we already had
Right.
and putting it in a place to where, okay, we actually have some stuff to work on here. Okay, this is where we can find these things. Okay, now I'm going to start creating some new documents. Like the business and my life did not change until I actually started to do some things. And so we really index for ideas are everywhere, but implementation is everything. Like you have to actually do some of the stuff, and then things will begin to change.
That's such a good point. You said a lot in there. And so do most people work with you through, it sounds like through like online group coaching then now? Is that the bulk of what you guys offer?
Yep. So we're together 38 out of 52 weeks in a
Okay.
group coaching call. It's actually on Tuesdays. We're recording this on a Tuesday. So we actually did it earlier today. And we do our sessions for right at 90 minutes. But how that 90 minutes is structured is really, really important as an example. And so we love to go into some breakout rooms for 10 minutes or so. They learn from each other. They come back to the bigger group, do some shares. But we feel like we found that 90 minutes is right at enough time. That first 20 minutes, how we structure that first 20 minutes, and then how we go for the next 60, and then how we close out for the final 10. Because I played with a lot of lengths. Okay. We used to
Yeah.
do 2 hours, too long. It just ends up being too long. People lose focus, how we integrate music into on those kind of things. It's pretty amazing some of the stuff that you can do really on Zoom to keep people, business owners, like all we work with is business owners and entrepreneurs. So
Sure.
like we recognize you're busy. Okay,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people pulling on your time. And so emails and text messages and messages from the team and Slack messages coming through is that we have to I mean, the cumulative value of that 90 minutes that's of the all the business owners that are on that call is well into the tens of thousands, hundreds of $100,000 plus the value of their time
Sure.
on that call. And so I think about that before we hit start to say, you know what, you better show up and have some stuff here that people actually get value out of. Otherwise, you're wasting a bunch of people's time. And it
Totally.
matters a lot. And I think that's why we've been able to have not just get clients, but clients have been with us for a really long time because it really is actionable things that they can say, okay, you know what? I can actually go install this playbook in my business. This is actually, hopefully really helpful to them.
Yeah, it seems like what you teach is something where you're going to leave that weekly call, pardon me, with action points, with, okay, here's what I'm doing between now and the next call. And I think that's really cool. I like actionable stuff, not just like, oh, that was a nice intake. And to your point, when you're dealing with the majority of your people are type A personalities with bombs going off all around them between Slack and everything else, it's you've got to provide value, and you kind of it's a short attention span too, right? So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. I know you and I were talking pre-show, and you said you've got some stuff that I think is going to be coming out shortly after this podcast airs, or right
Mhm.
around when it does. And I'm probably misphrasing this, but was it around like the 5 pillars of becoming an architect? Am I saying that right, or am I getting my terminology wrong?
It's close. It's
Okay.
close, right? It really is. So for a while, I mean, we've had this language for almost 3 years or so. Like that's when I kind of began to codify it in some of that language of, and I was actually talking to somebody whenever I said, look, I transitioned from being the rainmaker to the architect of the business. I mean, it wasn't some like sit down with a marketing agency and be like,
Right.
let's figure out a language here. I just said it and I was like, actually, I think that's a pretty good idea. And so, things kind of started to fall into place. Um, and so for a while, our members have really latched on to that. They really start to see it as an identity shift. They start to see themselves and then see everything in their business of like, okay, how can I architect this? Like that's some of the language. And I think it's a phenomenal concept. But one of the things that I wanted to try to, help our clients is how do we take this from just a high level abstract concept of like, okay, yeah, I get that, see myself as the architect, but how do you know when you've arrived? Like, what's the criteria? What are the elements that says these things are true? You have become the architect of your business. In fact, our one liner is Rainmaker architect is who you become. Blueprint OS is how you get there. It's like, okay, good. But what does that mean? What specifically does that mean? And so I did a thinking time session. I actually did a couple of them. We teach that to our clients to do that. And so I was doing my own thinking time session. And I started to write down all the things that I felt like would be true for someone to become the architect. And so I'll rattle off those 5 things for you and your listening audience. Number one is that you have a business that is doing over $1 million a year in top line revenue. And let me share with you why I think that's significant. 91% of small businesses in the US never cross $1 million in top line revenue. 96% of businesses never see their 10th birthday. So we quote those two stats often. 96% don't see their 10th birthday. And of the ones that make it, 91% never cross a million. Like it is tough. As a matter of fact, our in-person retreats that we do, our in-person retreats, we're going to, the time this is dropping, we'll be going to Big Cedar Lodge in Missouri just a couple weeks after this in person with all of our members. And we call those retreats beat the odds retreats for this very reason. And so that those odds are not in your favor. They're
Right.
just not. And if that was an airplane, I'm not getting on that airplane.
Of course.
So if you've got a business doing over a million, you've checked one of those boxes. And for many of your listening audience, they may have achieved that. Well, it's not enough to have the business doing top line of a million, but you want a business that's also growing and profitable. And Ken, sounds like before we hit record, you were familiar with this term called the rule of 40. And I think it's a great ratio for small business owners that says the combination of your year over year growth and the profit in the business is 40 and above. So if you got a business doing over a million and you've got a rule of 40 number of 40 or above, so your profit maybe is 20% and you grew last year 20%, the combination of those two things, if it exceeds 40 and you're over a million, man, you've checked off two of those boxes. Well done.
Yeah.
But if you're doing what I did 10 years ago and you're burning it and working 2,500 hours a year, missing out on family events, friends, activities that you love, what is it for? So we encourage our clients to take 12 weeks off. And when some people hear that, they go, what? 12 weeks off? That's impossible. Well, it's actually not. It's actually more doable than what you think. And so we encourage our business owners to structure their year off 40 weeks. Okay, so number one, got a business doing over a million. Number two, we're growing and profitable. And number three, we've taken 12 weeks off in a year. Number four, you have an EA in place to help you buy back your time. One of my coaches and friend, Dan Martell, wrote the book, Buy Back Your Time. We really believe that having an EA it is not a luxury. It is a necessity if you're a small business owner. It's a necessity. It really is. If you really want to work on the things that actually are going to grow your business, have an EA to help you buy back your time. It's a necessity. And then finally, number five, we say, show me, don't tell me. Show your work. Let's see your operating system. Have you actually documented exactly what you do? Show us your playbooks. And of course, that's what we teach in our system, is what playbooks to actually design, build, and install. But if you've got those five things, and we have a new award that we're giving out. This is brand new. This is the first time I've actually talked about this outside of my team, as a matter of fact. We're calling that the Rainmaker to Architect Journey Award. And for each one of those five, you earn a medallion if you're in one of our members. And it just signifies the journey that you're on. And so we've got some members that would already qualify for that and have hit all of them. And the majority of our members, when they come to us, they've knocked off one or two of those already, right? They're successful in and of themselves, but there's some areas that they want to. And so if you can knock out all the five of those medallions and complete your award, you really have become the architect of your business. And I just think that at least for the people we work with, that's what they're after.
I self-graded as we went through, so I was like, I'm pretty. It's solid, but there's I'm not taking 12 weeks off. I take a lot of time off, but not 12 weeks, and I want to. So that's something to work towards. And then I think we have the beginnings. Like I think we can shape up our operating systems really quickly and document them, but we're not. If I'm being honest, like if someone audited me right now, I would not pass that audit, in terms of having my playbooks done.
Love that. Love that. Thanks for sharing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We hit the other ones. We got the EA, we got the over a million, we got our 10th birthday even, but those are two big things, especially the 12 weeks off. Cause it's like, well, who cares if you got all the other ones, if you're not enjoying it. Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a couple clients right now that, their kids are older, so they don't have young kids anymore, and so one of the struggles that they needed to work through, which was a kind of a limiting belief, is they just didn't know what to do with the time. And so
right.
they would just backfill it to the point you made earlier, Ken, which I thought was great, which is like, wait a minute, we clear the time, capacity happens. And so then we don't know what to put back on it. Okay. And so then it's like, well, I guess I'll just work. Right.
Right.
And then things, they just start like finding problems in the business. We like to call that they're good firefighters, but they're better arsonists, right? And so they start becoming arsonists in the business, like starting fires just to go and put them out. But yeah, so like some of them have, like they take back up golf, or they go
Right.
hunting more,
Right.
or they go visit family that they haven't visited in a while. They travel more, and of course they got the income to be able to do that. But some of them just needed a push to
Yeah.
say, you know what, like, yeah, I do need to take up badminton or pickleball. No, we've had people pick up pickleball and things of that nature. And to a person, every one of them have come back and said, you know what? I am actually a better business owner. I show up
Sure.
better for my team
Sure.
than I thought I was going to. I'm working less and I show up better. I've got more energy. I'm clear-headed. I'm not scattered all over the place. I'm calmer than I ever have been. And the business actually is moving forward. And they almost are having this paradoxical moment of like, honestly can't believe that it's really like this. And I say, well, I get it because I was you.
I think part of that struggle, and you probably went through it too, and I know I have as well. And I think this is where your group and your coaching probably, in addition to the tools you're giving them, I think from a mindset standpoint, again, look at how you and I grew up and how we were wired. It's like type A, played sports, you're in business, you're the rainmaker, work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. It's almost like by telling them like, no, look, the plan is not to work hard, at least not forever. Maybe
Yep.
initially, right? Get it up off the ground, run hard. You got to be the rainmaker. We get it. You can't stay there. And you're giving them sort of permission
Yep.
to say like, no, it's good. It's okay. This is the reward, right?
Totally.
Because I think without a group or without a mentor telling you that, I don't know, man. Maybe those old things from when you were, well, if I sit around, I'm lazy. If I'm done working at noon, I'm not. And I think I know I've dealt with a lot of that in the past. I'm not dealing with that now. I'm okay with taking time off, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of people deal with that.
I'll give you kind of even an example that's in the business. So at our retreat back in the spring, we were in Scottsdale, and I was sitting with a longtime client, and he made a comment. We were doing kind of a round robin in front of everybody, and he made a comment that was really confusing to me at first. And he was talking about his quarterly planning, and I, in front of everybody, said, "Wait a minute, how much time, Dave, are you spending like putting together your quarterly plan? We call it, your quarterly targets." And he said, "Gosh, I probably spend 9 or 10 hours." And I said, 9 or 10 hours? What are you talking about? 9 or 10 hours? I'm doing quarterly planning for 5 companies and I'm not spending 9 hours. And he said, I don't know. I said, you need give yourself 90 minutes. Here's the point. What was happening, he didn't have anybody, there wasn't a forcing function on him. So like there was no I think I've heard this before. The difference in a river and a swamp is the river has
Has,
borders, right?
but
Or it
yeah,
has
borders.
banks.
Yes.
And so what was happening, he was a swamp because there was nothing like pushing on him to say like, no, 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 not 9 hours, an hour and a half. So then this next quarter, he's actually done it twice now. He said, yeah, you're right. Like actually, if I just give myself an hour and a half, I'm getting the exact same thing done. And he was overthinking. So his plans were becoming kind of more elaborate, like
Right.
longer, like meaning the documents literally instead of being a page and a half was maybe like 6 pages. And I was like,
Sure.
dude, your team cannot, this is too much. Okay. And it was because he was doing 9 or 10 hours and he was wanting to the thing you said so great is he wanted to do good. He was
Yeah.
wanting to do good. He wasn't half butting it, right? He was really wanting to do good, but it was too much. It was too much, and he was actually analyzing, overthinking it because he had no constraints on the time.
Right.
Versus if I said, no, 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 wait a minute, it's 90 minutes. That's what you got, a quarter, maybe 2 hours. And when he put that guardrail on him, he was like, okay, he now gets just as much done. It's better, it's more succinct, it's to the point. In that 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours, he gets it done. It's simpler. His team could go execute on it. And that's just kind of a specific example of somebody wanting to do good, but he was just overthinking it.
Totally. Makes so much sense. Well, it's been awesome meeting you. I align with everything that you're talking about, and I'm definitely going to take some time to dive into your stuff online. We'll put all the ways to get in touch with you and look at what you guys do in the show notes. Anything else that you wanted to close out with before we go, Bradley?
Yeah, I'd love to. One of our core values is to provide value first and over deliver. And what we specifically mean by that is way before anybody ever becomes a client or member of any of the programs that we have, we want to truly provide value. So thank you, Ken, for the opportunity to
Of course.
provide value to your listening audience on this podcast. I hope I was able to deliver on that. And I want to give people access to, I've got a starter kit that they can get access to if they just go to blueprintos.com/assets, blueprintos.com/assets. they can get access to our starter kit. It's a mini course I put together. We used to have a number of different lead magnets out there that were free tools. And we just simplified it to say if somebody, because honestly, I was doing podcasts like this and people would ask me, sounds great. Where did you start? Where do you recommend people start? And I said, you know what? I'm just going to put together these specific assets and video trainings from me that walk you through those assets. And so we've got a mini course that they can check out, which is called the Starter Kit. It's on that page, and love for people to get access to that. And then they can connect with me. I'm not super active on social, that my team is on me about that, but
Yeah.
they can connect with me personally on LinkedIn.
Cool. You're not doing any TikTok dances or anything like that around being
Oh,
an
my
architect?
nine-year-old daughter, soon to be 10, is really pushing me to start doing some of those. She's big into dance, but no, I have not made it over into TikTok.
Well, good for you. Hey, really good to meet you, Bradley. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Ken. Appreciate it.
Take care.